The Galactic Empire had long regarded humans as a necessary evil, tolerated only because the cost of their extinction would be far too great. The records of previous wars were filled with battles where human forces, despite being outnumbered, had decimated fleets, overturned planetary defenses, and walked through environments that should have killed them instantly. The Council had issued standing advisories. Do not engage humans unless absolutely necessary, and never, under any circumstances, assume a human is defeated. But complacency had crept in over centuries of relative peace. The humans had withdrawn to their controlled sectors, rarely seen beyond their borders, their ferocity a fading memory to most species. Newer generations within the Empire saw humans not as deathworlders, but as over-glorified barbarians whose terror had been exaggerated. When a human woman was captured in a minor border conflict, the Empire viewed it as a trivial event. She was isolated, her transport ship destroyed, her identity unconfirmed. To the Empire, she was an expendable prisoner, an opportunity to humiliate humanity publicly. No one bothered to ask why a human would be traveling alone near Imperial space without escort. The alien officers in charge of her detainment celebrated their small victory, dismissing the vague warnings attached to her biometric profile. She offered no resistance during her capture, walking silently between her guards with the same unreadable expression that unsettled the more experienced soldiers. The initial interrogations were fruitless. They used every known psychological manipulation, deprivation, sensory assault, threats, promises, and the more brutal methods reserved for enemies of the Empire. None of it broke her. She endured the sessions in silence, not defiant, not pleading, simply watching. Her stillness was unnerving. Occasionally, she would utter short, seemingly meaningless statements. Things like, "You still have time," or "This can end another way." The interrogators ignored these, interpreting them as the cryptic ramblings of a defeated prisoner. As days passed, the guard became bolder. The lack of response to their aggression emboldened them to escalate their cruelty. They believed they had broken her, though she had never actually submitted. Her refusal to scream, to beg, to show even a flicker of fear frustrated them. Some viewed it as a challenge, others as an insult to their authority. The Empire decided she would serve as an example, a broadcasted symbol of imperial dominance over the so-called human threat. Her upcoming public punishment was planned meticulously, designed to showcase her as weak, helpless, and ultimately defeated. Reports began to surface, buried deep within classified channels, that suggested she was no ordinary human. Data inconsistencies, unexplainable security failures, and subtle biometric anomalies started to alarm a few intelligence officers. But their warnings were dismissed by higher command. To the Empire, humans were a spent force, a dying breed confined to their little corner of the galaxy. Besides, this prisoner was just a lone woman caught on the fringe. What possible threat could she represent? Her restraint was mistaken for submission. Her calmness was misread as defeat. And so, the Empire broadcasted her public punishment across their systems, their soldiers jeering and the galaxy watching. They struck her down in front of their citizens, believing they had achieved a symbolic victory. In that moment, something subtle changed. A signal pulsed from her embedded tracker, activating dormant systems no one in the Empire had known to search for. It was not a distress beacon. It was a trigger, a dormant protocol, quietly roared to life. Throughout the Empire's borders, hidden human surveillance crafts began transmitting. Their signals bypassed Imperial firewalls and reached deeply embedded human assets placed in the Empire decades prior. Human encryption algorithms, long thought to be unsolvable, unlocked themselves in activated fleets that had been positioned silently beyond sensor ranges. The prisoner had never been alone. She had been the linchpin in a contingency plan designed for this exact scenario. As the Empire's broadcast reached its peak, human fleets decloaked across multiple systems simultaneously. Hundreds of ships, their hulls black and lined with technologies the Empire had not seen in centuries, emerged with surgical precision. Human tactical AI, operating at speeds that render Imperial defenses obsolete, initiated coordinated strikes. The Empire's early warning systems failed before they could even issue alerts. Military installations vanished in bursts of kinetic bombardment that exceeded anything previously encountered. While Empire commanders scrambled, confused by the scale and speed of the assault, the prisoner sat calmly in her cell, monitoring the silent communications flooding her personal implant. She had authorized this response years ago. Every movement of the human fleet was unfolding exactly as designed. She sent a brief message to her captors, a single phrase, "Now you know." The Empire had never imagined humans would prepare entire war fleets for the contingency of a single captured soldier. They had never understood that to humans, no one was expendable. They never believed a human prisoner would have absolute command authority, even while in captivity. Attempts to transfer the prisoner failed. The prison systems were already compromised. Human infiltration teams, using stealth suits capable of fooling biometric scanners, were already inside the compound. By the time the guards realized their mistake, the prisoner was gone. She had walked out unshackled. As human units cleared the facility around her, the public broadcast had become a beacon not of Imperial dominance, but of their impending downfall. The Empire's outer sectors began to collapse under the weight of the human onslaught. Imperial fleets sent to intercept the attackers were dismantled with terrifying precision. Humans deployed weapons that violated every known convention. Gravitational singularity devices, hacking viruses that physically destroyed Imperial vessels by overloading their power cores, and kinetic strikes that bypassed shields entirely. The Empire issued desperate communications to the Galactic Council, pleading for assistance, but the other species refused to intervene. No one wanted to antagonize the humans further. Empires that had once postured as equals now watched in silence, unwilling to risk their own territories. The prisoner's identity was finally confirmed through recovered human intelligence fragments. She was not a soldier. She was not a diplomat. She was the supreme commander of the Human Strategic Response Fleet. Her capture had not been an accident. It had been part of a calculated move to position human forces for a crippling strike against the Empire. She had offered them warnings during her interrogation, but they had chosen humiliation over understanding. Human messages flooded Imperial communication channels. They were not threats. They were statements. You attacked one. We respond as all. The meaning was clear to every species that listened. The humans did not fight for territory. They did not fight for conquest. They fought for each other without limit, without hesitation, without restraint. Panic spread to the Empire as human fleets materialized across dozens of systems in perfect unison. Empire officials struggled to comprehend how such a vast coordinated strike could be executed without any warning. Their surveillance systems had detected nothing. Their patrols had found no trace of an impending assault. Human ships bypassed defenses as if they had been mapped in advance, striking deep within critical infrastructure hubs with absolute precision. In less than an hour, entire communication networks went dark, power grids collapsed, and supply chains were severed. The Empire's greatest strength, its logistical reach, disintegrated under the weight of the sudden human offensive. Commands to regroup and retaliate were sent, but quickly silenced. Human electromagnetic pulses rendered command ships blind and mute. Imperial fleets tasked with defense found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate, their flagships destroyed in the opening salvos. Human tactical algorithms adapted to every Imperial maneuver with frightening speed, countering strategies before they could be fully executed. The Empire's once mighty fleet formations disintegrated as captains fled, faced with an enemy that anticipated their every move. Human vessels deployed swarms of autonomous kinetic weapons that overwhelmed defense grids, tearing through hulls and rupturing critical systems with ruthless efficiency. Messages from the supreme commander of the human fleet began broadcasting across Imperial channels. They were short, deliberate, and without emotion. The humans demanded the unconditional surrender of all Imperial forces involved in the capture and assault of the prisoner. They provided the exact names, locations, and designations of every officer, soldier, and facility connected to the incident. The precision of this information unnerved Imperial leadership. The humans had been watching, waiting, and they knew everything. Empire citizens who had celebrated the prisoner's public punishment now faced the consequences of their leadership's arrogance. Human warships appeared in orbit above key Imperial worlds, not launching planetary bombardments, but instead disabling orbital defenses and systematically dismantling shipyards, command centers, and military outposts. Empire soldiers, trained for conventional warfare, were powerless against the speed and unpredictability of the human assault. Human infiltration teams penetrated secure facilities with ease, exploiting weaknesses no alien strategist had ever considered. They disabled entire fleets by triggering self-destruct protocols remotely. The Empire's technological superiority, once unchallenged, now worked against them as humans weaponized their infrastructure against them. The psychological pressure escalated as human forces intercepted Imperial transmissions, inserting video loops of the prisoner's captivity and the Empire's brutal treatment of her. These broadcasts played endlessly, accompanied by a simple message: "You did this." Imperial citizens and soldiers alike began to crumble under the guilt and the relentless human advance. Desertion skyrocketed. Some planetary governors opened their cities to human forces without resistance, hoping for leniency. Others attempted last-ditch defenses only to be systematically neutralized. The Supreme Commander, now fully restored to her position, directed the campaign with cold precision. She ordered surgical strikes, disabling key assets while avoiding civilian casualties whenever possible. But her patience was limited. When resistance persisted, entire military installations were erased without warning. Imperial leadership's repeated pleas for ceasefire were ignored. They had crossed a line humanity would not tolerate. The humans were no longer negotiating. They were delivering consequences. Empire sectors that once held critical supply routes fell like dominoes. Human vessels, equipped with advanced cloaking systems, moved undetected until they struck, vanishing before counterattacks could materialize. The Empire's attempts to deploy countermeasures failed. Human electronic warfare units overwhelmed their defenses, seizing control of Imperial drones and automated systems, turning them against their creators. Each attempt to stabilize the front was met with a devastating new tactic that rendered Imperial strategies obsolete. In desperation, the Empire dispatched their most elite fleet to ambush the human command ship. They calculated the Supreme Commander's probable location and marshaled their remaining strength for a decisive strike. But the humans had anticipated the move. The Supreme Commander was never there. The fleet walked into a trap, surrounded by cloaked human vessels waiting at precise attack vectors. The ambush collapsed in minutes. Imperial ships annihilated in a coordinated crossfire that left no survivors. Throughout Imperial space, human forces executed relentless psychological campaigns. Messages appeared on civilian networks, declaring the names of captured officers, listing the crimes committed against the prisoner, and detailing the inevitable collapse of each remaining Imperial stronghold. Imperial commanders realized the humans had mapped not just their infrastructure, but their entire chain of command, their logistics, their fallback contingencies. There was nowhere left to hide. Human infiltration teams began retrieving high-value targets. Officers involved in the prisoner's mistreatment vanished, extracted in surgical strikes that left no trace. Imperial citizens who had participated in the public humiliation of the prisoner faced quiet retribution. The humans made no grand statements about these actions. They did not need to. Their precision, their patience, and their absolute focus on the individuals responsible sent a message more terrifying than any overt threat. The humans had not come to conquer territory. They had come for justice, delivered without mercy. Empire worlds surrendered in rapid succession. Planetary governors issued desperate appeals for clemency. Some attempted to hand over subordinates to buy favor. Others simply abandoned their posts, hoping to disappear before human forces arrived. Human fleets pressed forward, dismantling resistance with mechanical efficiency. Entire shipyards went offline. Military academies were reduced to rubble. The Empire's central command structure fractured as planetary systems declared autonomy to distance themselves from a crumbling hierarchy. Human fleets moved in coordinated waves, their tactics shifting unpredictably, rendering traditional defense strategies useless. Imperial commanders attempted to deploy decoys and false information to disrupt human operations. The humans ignored the misdirection, striking precisely where it hurt most. Empire scientists attempted to decipher human communication protocols, only to find layers of encryption impossible to breach. Every attempt to understand the depth of the human strategy ended in failure. Throughout the campaign, The Supreme Commander maintained absolute control. Her communications to Imperial leadership were concise. She provided timelines for surrender, specific terms for the release of captives, and clear lists of targets the humans would continue to pursue. She offered no negotiations. Each missed deadline resulted in the systematic destruction of key assets. Empire leaders who attempted to delay the inevitable found their strongholds obliterated without warning. The Empire's leadership, fractured and desperate, gathered to review the final ultimatum issued by the Supreme Commander of the human fleet. The demand was non-negotiable: unconditional surrender or complete eradication. There would be no meetings, no bargaining, no extensions. The Empire's response would dictate the course of its survival. Weighing the magnitude of the destruction already inflicted and facing the undeniable collapse of their defenses, the remaining rulers hesitated, trapped between the shame of surrender and the certainty of annihilation. Their final attempt to stall, to beg for a moderated settlement, was met with silence. The humans had grown tired of waiting. The Supreme Commander authorized a demonstration strike. Without ceremony, the humans deployed a kinetic weapon at velocities that bypassed every Imperial defense system. The targeted Imperial moon, critical for naval production and resource processing, was vaporized in seconds. The impact was immediate and absolute, leaving behind a cloud of debris and a silence that paralyzed Imperial communication channels. There had been no countdown, no warning, no demand for evacuation. It was a pure, calculated message. Delay carried a price. The Empire's leadership watched the footage in disbelief, realizing they had misjudged both the patience and ferocity of their enemy. After the strike, the human fleets adjusted their positions, not advancing but tightening their control over remaining Imperial systems. Empire intelligence detected no internal debates, no conflicting directives within the human command structure. The humans moved as one entity, fully aligned behind their Supreme Commander, with no signs of hesitation. The Empire's internal divisions deepened. Some factions demanded total surrender. Others called for desperate last stands, but none possessed the means to resist the human fleet's overwhelming reach. Civilian populations, gripped by fear, protested violently against further resistance, pressuring governors to accept the human terms before entire worlds faced the same fate as the destroyed moon. The Supreme Commander appeared across Imperial broadcast networks, delivering a final message. Her voice was steady, devoid of triumph or cruelty. She detailed the new reality. The Empire would disband its military fleets, seize control of its core logistical hubs, and surrender the officers responsible for the prisoners' capture and abuse. Failure to comply in full would result in the systematic eradication of the Empire's leadership and military infrastructure. There would be no partial surrenders, no segmented peace. The Empire would either accept these terms entirely or cease to exist. The clarity of the message left no room for misinterpretation. The Empire's highest-ranking officials, broken and cornered, signed the unconditional surrender. The formal acceptance was transmitted to the human fleet, and within minutes, the humans ceased their operations. Human vessels remained in position, observing, but made no further advances. The Supreme Commander ordered the immediate extraction of the identified officers who had orchestrated and participated in the prisoners' mistreatment. Human infiltration units executed precise operations, seizing the targets from deep within Imperial territories, often bypassing multiple layers of security without detection. None of the targets escaped. Each was captured or eliminated in accordance with the Supreme Commander's standing directives. News of surrender spread rapidly. Imperial worlds that had endured the brutal human offensive now faced the consequences of their leadership's arrogance. The collapse of the Empire's military command left planetary governors scrambling to maintain order. Some attempted to preserve their influence by denouncing their former superiors, but the humans had already cataloged the chain of responsibility with perfect accuracy. The surrender terms were not designed to punish the Empire's population, but to dismantle the power structures that had enabled the initial atrocity. Beyond the Empire, the galaxy's other major powers watched in silence, reassessing every diplomatic policy involving humanity. Treaties were quietly restructured. Resource exchanges were offered on increasingly favorable terms to the humans. Expansionist ambitions aimed at human-adjacent territories were abandoned without debate. The demonstration of human military precision and psychological dominance reshaped the galactic balance of power, without the humans needing to claim a single new system. The Supreme Commander's campaign became the central case study in military academies across the galaxy. Analysts attempted to understand how the humans had coordinated such a massive response so rapidly, how they had deployed infiltration units with such precision, and how their fleets had achieved such devastating operational dominance. No comprehensive answers were found. The humans had executed a flawless retaliation without revealing the full extent of their capabilities. The message was unambiguous. Humanity's strength did not lie in their fleet sizes or territorial holdings, but in their unparalleled unity and their unshakable resolve to protect their own. The Supreme Commander continued her work without fanfare. She reviewed the Empire's surrender compliance in meticulous detail, ensuring that all agreed transfers and dissolutions were completed fully. When it became clear that certain sectors were attempting to shield officers from the surrender terms, human special units were deployed again. The message had been clear from the beginning. There would be no safe harbor for those who had participated in the prisoners' humiliation. The humans provided no demands for resources, no political concessions, no territorial acquisitions. They left the Empire stripped of its military power, but intact in governance, as long as the new leadership honored the surrender terms. The galaxy realized that humanity's war had been one of principle, not a conquest. The Supreme Commander's silence regarding expansion or dominance sent a more powerful message than any public declaration. The humans did not seek control. They sought acknowledgement. They demanded that the galaxy understand the weight of harming even one of their own. Alien diplomats who once dismissed humanity as volatile and dangerous now approached them with careful deference. Human envoys were welcomed with unprecedented respect. Trade routes were reopened under human-favored terms. The galaxy's perception of humanity shifted from that of reckless warriors to disciplined tacticians capable of reshaping entire empires without leaving a permanent occupying force. Their power was in certainty that they would answer threats with overwhelming, focused retaliation, guided by a code that prioritized the defense of their people above all else.